And we turn to the next speaker. The next speaker, Assistant Professor Rabi'ah Aminudin. Are you ready to present your presentation?
Will you share my screen or should I share my screen?
You can share by yourself if you want.
Oh, I cannot because it is not, it is disabled. So I hope that you can help too.
Okay, okay. Um, okay, can you try to show your presentation?
Let me, okay.
Yes.
Wait a minute, yeah. Okay, this is good. Okay, does it appear? My screen?
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
okay.
not here. Oh yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay, maybe I can start.
Yeah, you can start now. And I remind you that the time will be between 30 to 40 minutes.
Yes. Hopefully I will not go exceed beyond
Sorry,
that.
you. Okay,
Okay.
you can start to present now.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh dan selamat siang semua. Pertamanya terima kasih Ulum atas jemputan dari Universitas Jember. Saya ingin juga berterima kasih kepada Associate Professor Dr. Bayu Dwi Anggono sebagai Dekan Fakulti Tata Negara, Fakultas Hukum, kepada panelis Dr. Jayus dan juga Ibu Titi Anggrani. Saya Rabi'ah Aminudin dari Universiti Islam Antarabangsa Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. Jadi saya mohon izin untuk meneruskan perbicaraan hari ini dalam bahasa Inggeris supaya tidak ada perbezaan maksud. Mungkin kita dalam sesi Q&A insya-Allah kita boleh menggunakan kedua-dua bahasa Malaysia, bahasa Inggeris dan bahasa Indonesia. So first of all, my topic will be on the analysis on Malaysian women political empowerment. Right? Let me how to play this slide. Okay, let me just. Oh, it must be somewhere here. Okay, so my topic is on analysis of women political empowerment in Malaysia. All right, so what I will go through today is that the first thing is introduction, why this topic is very important and why we need to look into women political empowerment. Why do we need to encourage women to be more politically involved and to identify what are the issues that actually have become obstacles to women from becoming politically involved in their own setting. Secondly is about the level of Malaysian women political empowerment in general in the world as well as in ASEAN. This is of our last general election in 2018, right? So what I will do is that I will discuss about women political empowerment in the last general election through three aspects: the candidacy of women, secondly is the number of women in the legislature, and third is the number of women being factors that actually become an issues for women to be politically active in Malaysia. And then I will also discuss about the current political situation in Malaysia, I am not sure if any of you are aware of Malaysian political situation, turmoil amidst of COVID-19 pandemic, and I will discuss about how this political situation in Malaysia has affected women and what are the reasons of it. And lastly, I will discuss about how to move forward with what are the suggestions that I think could help to increase Malaysian women political participation, right? I hope I'm not going too fast as well. Okay. They make up half of the world population, and yet they are still politically underrepresented, right? Although women make up about 49.5% of world population, but they still make up less than 30% in terms of representation in politics. So even if we look at the global level, we can only see that there are only 24% of female representatives in legislature, right? And less so in the ministerial positions. So where are the women and where are women voices when we look at the global pattern of women political representation? A lot of studies that have been done to look into women political representation, but these particular studies, they often focused on the implementation of gender quota, right? And also they focused on the state institution as one of the most important political institution that can help to increase women political participation. However, I would propose that there is another political institution that we need to look at in order for us to increase women political participation, especially in democratic setting, which is political party, right? So the current political literature is not sufficient when we are talking about women political participation. So we need to implore and explore more on how political parties as agent of power that can improve female political representation and female political participation. If we leave out the discussion on political parties, I don't think we are able to finally move or increase women political participation at the global level, right? So this presentation aims to provide an overall picture of the recent trend of Malaysian women's political participation, right? And I hope that it can also spark discussions of what we can learn from one another. What we can learn from Indonesia, and perhaps I'm not sure if there is anything that Indonesia can learn from us, because Malaysia is faring at the lower level in comparison to Indonesia in terms of political participation. So definitely there are more things that we can learn from you. So I would discuss a little bit on Malaysian's political system, the background of Malaysian political system. I will discuss about women political participation more in terms of the political setting, which is my background from political science. So when we look at Malaysia political system, it is in total contrast, I would say, with Indonesia, right? First of all, when we look at Indonesia is a republic and also a presidential system, Malaysia is a parliamentary democracy, and also we have constitutional monarchy, right? So the head of state in Malaysia is who we call the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, or the king. And the king is selected among all. We have 9 kings that represent the 9 states, right? And these kings will be selected by the King Council every 5 years, right? So the selection of the king to be the king of Malaysia is done by the Rulers' Council every 5 years, right? So therefore, there is a different type of democracy that we have in Malaysia. And also we use parliamentary democracy, and in parliamentary democracy, there is fusion of power between the executive and legislature, in which the prime minister and the cabinet ministers must be from the legislature, right? Must be from the parliament. And the prime minister is not elected by the people. It is often the leader of the political party that win the majority in the lower house. Although I would have to say that in the current political situation, this is not what happens, but it still consists of political coalition or political alliances, and they are not elected by the people directly. Okay, so we have bicameral system, which is we have the upper house and the lower house, and the lower house is what we call the Dewan Rakyat, or this is the House of the Representatives, right? And the upper house consists of the senates. They are specially elected. So every 5 years, we will have general elections, and this is the maximum period. The 5 years is the maximum period to elect members of the parliament, which is of the Dewan Rakyat at the federal level, right? So we have also, unlike Indonesia, which also have election at the local levels, we only have elections at 2 levels, which is at the federal level and also at the state level, right? So we elect the members of the Dewan Rakyat at the federal level, and we elect the state legislative assembly members at the state level. So we have overall 13 states altogether and 1 federal territory, right? And this 1 federal territory consists of 3 areas. So we have 13 states. We have Sabah, Sarawak, Perlis, Kedah, Penang, Perak, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, Melaka, Johor, Pahang, Terengganu, and Kelantan. And why this is important to introduce the federal system that we have is that we are going to also, I'm going to discuss about how the election happened and at which level that women are more involved in, or there is higher percentage of women elected, either at federal level or at the state level. We practice first past the post, FPP, meaning that the winner is the one who gains the majority of the votes. And in the last general election in 2018, it sees the collapse of Barisan Nasional, in which this is the political coalition that has ruled Malaysia since independence, since 1961. So it was one of the world's longest ruling coalition ever. But now I think with the collapse of Barisan Nasional, it was seen as the starting of a new paradigm in Malaysian politics, but definitely it also led to what we are currently facing, the political turmoil that we are currently facing. Right? I hope I'm not going too fast. Okay. So when we discuss about women in politics in Malaysia, right, we can see that in ASEAN as a whole, political empowerment is still an issue. And it is still the dimension with the largest gap in ASEAN countries, especially in Malaysia. The gap is 25%, right? In comparison to the other 3, which is education, economic participation, and also health or maternity. The Global Gap Index 2020 actually ranked Malaysia 104th out of 153 countries, right? Which is a further, we have degraded ourselves somehow from the 70th. In 2017, we were 70th out of 144 countries. And that is the reason why we need to discuss about women political empowerment, right? And in the domain of political empowerment itself, Malaysia is ranked at 117 out of 153 countries in 2020, in comparison to 19 out of 114 countries in 2006. So in ASEAN, we are only better than Thailand, Myanmar, and Cambodia, right? So I think Philippines, Indonesia ranks very high in terms of women political empowerment, although I have to say that there are more things that we can do in order to improve our women's position in ASEAN as a whole. So when we talk about Malaysian's population, we have about 32 million population. Our population is about 32 million. And I think Indonesia has about close to 268 million. right? Although women makes up about 49% of Malaysian population, there are only around 11 to 12% of women in the legislature. So this particularly reflects the low level of women participation as policymakers. And something needs to be done in order for us to improve women's situation in Malaysia. Right. So if you look at the gender gap report in 2020, this is the latest gender gap report in 2020, and we can see that Malaysia is actually the second lowest, right, in terms of gender gap index. So that is something that I think I feel very passionately about, that we have to do something in order to make the lives of women in Malaysia better, right? So we are only second to Myanmar. Right, so this does not correlate with the so-called economic development, Malaysia's GDP. It seems that women are still very much left behind, even though people might see that Malaysia is developing, but women are very much left behind in this economic development process. So I will also talk about mainly I will focus, because this is about election. So I will mainly focus on the latest election that we had in 2018, right? So we had three major political coalitions in the 14th general election. First is we have the Barisan Nasional, and Barisan Nasional is mainly consist of ethnic-based political parties. So one thing about Malaysian politics, it is highly dominated by ethnic identity, right? So it is consists of UMNO, which represents the Malays. We have MIC, or Malaysian Indian Congress, that represent the Indians. And also we have MCA, Malaysian Chinese Association, representing the Chinese. We have Gerakan, which is supposed to be a multiracial political party, but it is still seen as very much predominantly by Chinese. And then we have also PBB, which is Sarawak or Borneo-based political parties, right? And secondly, we have Gagasan, right? Gagasan basically is consists of coalition of religious-based political parties. But when I say religious-based political parties, it is only Islamic political parties, right? Because Islam is considered to have special position in Malaysia, and therefore I think only Islamic-based political parties are allowed in Malaysia. So in this coalition, we have Islamic Political Party, or PAS, and then we have Parti Ikatan Bangsa Malaysia. And the third one, we have Pakatan Harapan. And Pakatan Harapan is supposed to be consisting of multiracial political parties, right? We have Parti Keadilan Rakyat, which is seen as Anwar Ibrahim's political party, but it is a multiracial political party. And then we have DAP, Democratic Action Party. It is seen as a mainly Chinese political party, even though it is multiracial, right? And then we have Amanah, which is a splinter political party from PAS. So it is a Islamic-based political, Islam-based, a religious-based political party, but bringing idea of a multiracial harmony in Malaysia. And then we have Bersatu, which is a Malay-dominant political parties. So the main reasons I am introducing all these political coalitions, and what you can see is that political ethnic identity is still the main driving factor for political parties. It is the ideology. Ethnic politics is the ideology that drives political parties in Malaysia. So what does it mean for women? I will explain it later, right? So we can look at the gender agendas in the manifestos presented by the political parties, all the political coalitions. We can see that Barisan Nasional have about only 7.3% of its manifestos to touch on gender agendas, right? Gagasan have about 6.57, which is almost close to 7%. And Pakatan Harapan is the political coalition that present the highest number of women agendas, which is close to 29%, right? So we can see that gender agendas were given attention by political parties. They made it a point to actually include gender agendas in their manifestos, in their bid to attract voters to vote for them. In the past, gender agendas were not even visible in political parties' manifestos. However, we can see that in all of these three coalitions, which coalition that actually have the highest concern to include gender agendas, which is Pakatan Harapan. However, when we look at the gender agendas that they presented in their general election manifestos, we can see that it is basically non-doctrinal, meaning that it does not challenge the existing code of conducts in the society. It does not challenge the existing religious doctrine or cultural traditions of the societies. It is much more focused on non-doctrinal policies, right? Doctrinal policies such as minimum age of marriage and family laws, they have given some attention to it, but not too many. Yeah. So most of the gender agendas presented in the last general election manifestos, I would say mainly were considered as safe for conservative societies such as in Malaysia. In terms of candidates, right, we can see that the number of candidates. So when we look at the number of candidates, it's actually not that encouraging, right? We only have 74 female candidates for Barisan Nasional, 87 female candidates for Pakatan Harapan, and the least one is Gagasan with only 36 female candidates, right? So the number of candidates that are being presented in the GE14 is less than 30%. And so we can see that the number of female elected to the legislative bodies also is much lesser, right? Most of the, we can see that there are only about 27% of, 27 out of 222 seats in the parliament, only 27 are occupied by women, which is about 12%. Yeah, in the state assemblies is also the same thing. Out of 518 seats that we have in the 13 states, right? Only 63 women occupied the state assemblies. So I am presenting this. Please bear in mind that this does not include the state of Sarawak, because the state of Sarawak have a different cycle of general election, right? That is one of their specialty given to the state of Sarawak. When we look at the number of Malaysians cabinet in 2018, we can see that in average, women only occupied 18%, right? So we can see only 9 out of 50 positions in the Malaysian cabinet. And this is a far cry from the 30% of women ministers as promised in the Pakatan Harapan's manifestos. So it seems that women are facing obstacles at each levels of entry into politics, right? In terms of political candidacy, in the stage of winning the seats to become the members of the Legislative Assembly, and also to be selected as the cabinet members as part of the executive. So what are the factors that hinders women becoming involved in politics? So this is based on my interviews with female and male politicians as part of my research project. So there are two aspects that we've identified. First is the political institution, and second is the personal aspect of obstacles, right? But I will be focusing more on the political institution. First, they mentioned about the inconducive political environment. The political environment, which means that the way that politics is being done in Malaysia is not friendly to women. legislative assembly, for example, can become too aggressive for women. And they also, at times, there were only discussions about how to make parliament building more friendly towards women by having childcare facilities, and also to abolish the smoking room, to give room for women to have their own nursing room, for example, right, for childcare purposes. So this inconducive political environment is seen as one of the main obstacles for women to be involved in politics. Second is there is a lack of political will from political parties. Political parties simply do not have the courage to actually improve women's position in the political parties. This is mainly due to the patronage system practiced by the political parties or that have existed in Malaysian political system, in which you have to reward those who have given their supports to you. And also existence of warlords on the ground, meaning that at the grassroots level, the political parties also have to please the warlords. And these warlords often become the obstacle for women to be elected at the grassroots level political parties, right? And also we have first past the post. And in a very diverse setting like Malaysia, where we have so many social cleavages that we need to address, such as ethnic, gender, socioeconomic, first past the post system, electoral system, only benefit those who have the highest number of support. So if you belong to the minority in that particular setting, it is very difficult for you to move forward, right? And this is one of the main obstacles faced by women, because of the electoral system itself is not friendly for their inclusion. And then we have the existence of women wing. Women wing is seen as something to actually help women to be more involved in politics. But on the other hand, women wing also has resulted in the exclusion of women from the mainstream politics. Women wings often given support roles by the political parties. And of course, the main issue is with the ethnic politics. The ethnic politics in Malaysia supersedes other discussions about other political identities, such as socioeconomic, gender, and this has resulted gender to be pushed aside by political parties and not being given due attention. So they are much more concerned about ethnic politics rather than to give due attention to other kind of identities. At personal levels, of course, you have the family support. It is very rare for female politicians to receive full support from their husbands, from their parents, right? Because of the family duties that are expected from them. And also they don't have enough access to resources, financial resources, especially when they are not economically well, right? In terms of network, they don't have the necessary network to help them and push them into the mainstream politics. And also the lack of exposure, meaning that women are not exposed to the importance of politics. And I think this relate well with Dr. Jaya's presentation earlier, that women need to be given education, they need to be given space to actually carry out their duties also as a citizen of the country. So this is an example of how our political institutions are not friendly to female politicians, especially, right? There have been countless times, many times in which they male MPs made sensitive remarks towards female MPs. In the current political situation, so what happened is that after Pakatan Harapan won the election in 2018, after only 22 months in power, that the government actually collapsed due to internal political turmoil, right? So what we have, the government that we have now is not the government that we have elected, but rather the government that we have now is the government that happened because of the changes of allegiance from the parliament members, right? So some parliament members have actually jumped the ship to the other side and therefore give the numbers for the current government to actually form the government. So Muhyiddin Yassin was announced as Malaysia's 8th Prime Minister on 1st March 2020. This is happening amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. So you can see that we are struggling with two things, politics on one hand, and also COVID-19 on the other. So this is happening, all this political turmoil. Even currently, we are having a change of state government in Perak, and this is all happening amidst COVID-19 pandemic, right? So Muhyiddin Yassin from Bersatu basically took out Bersatu from the earlier coalition, right? And he formed a government by allying with UMNO and PAS. So there is no absolute majority. Currently, the government that we have now, they do not have absolute majority. And this is made worse by fickle-minded politicians who change their alliances by minutes, right? So in the morning, they side with Muhyiddin Yassin, and the next in the evening, they side with Anwar Ibrahim. So there is sort of no stability in terms of the government because they don't have absolute majority. So the disruption in the existing political coalition has resulted in the reshuffling of cabinet. And when we look at the reshuffling of cabinet, so why? Because these politicians want to give more attention to please those who have given their alliance or their allegiance of loyalty to the prime minister, to the current prime minister, rather than looking at how the cabinet actually reflect the demography of the country. Again, we had Sabah state election on the 26th September in 2020. And Sabah state election happened because there was also a struggle of power. So we had seen that there is a shift of power from the existing political party, right, to another political party. So the Sabah state election that happened on 26 September in 2020 has resulted in the spike of COVID-19 cases in Malaysia. So before Sabah state election, we had about 40,000 cases, but now we have close to 70, we had 70,000 cases and over since yesterday. Right, so we had seen that how Sabah state election has actually happened during the pandemic, and they did not give the politicians gave more importance on who will win the state election in comparison to complying with the SOPs, right? So in the 2020 cabinet, we can see that we have additional 15 portfolios in comparison to 2018. Please mind you, these are all our ministers and deputy ministers for only 30 million people, right? And again, female representation as cabinet members is further reduced to only 9%, right? And this creation of additional portfolios were given as rewards to political parties and also individual politicians who show their support towards Muhyiddin premiership majority, and therefore they had to do everything. The prime minister had to reward those who give them who give him their allegiance so that he can continue to form the government. This is also after you can see also the shift of gender narratives by government agencies. So this is actually government campaigns during COVID-19 when we had our first restrictive movement control order in which everyone cannot go out more than 10 kilometers out of their home. So everyone was locked down in their own place. So basically this particular image shows that how couples, if they want to maintain harmonious relationship, the wife should use Doraemon's tone of voice to avoid conflict in the house. And also, this comes from the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development, asking women to doll up to base it at their own houses, right? So you can see this kind of gender narratives also have changed to reflect the patriarchal institution in comparison to the government that was chosen or that was elected in 2018. So this has resulted in an outcry from the public about what is the direction of the government in terms of women's agenda, because it seems that they go back to the patriarchal style of women agenda. So how can Malaysia move forward, right? So if Malaysia is serious about, and Malaysia has no other choice but to include more women in their political decision making, simply one of it is for survivability, right? The World Bank has alarmed Malaysia that we are an aging society, and if we do not utilize further left behind in terms of our society's development. First of all, political parties play important role to push women in politics, and they need to have structures that put women basically in political parties' leadership position. Right? They need to push themselves and they need to move beyond the warlords. Right? So the political parties' leadership need to identify the structures on how to make women much more visible in terms of leadership position. And they also, political institutions also need to have clear rules and regulations to ensure friendly political environment for women and men alike. There need to be, for example, parliamentary reform is needed to ensure that parliament is a place to be, that is friendly for both men and women, and for women to actually feel safe to represent their constituencies in the parliament and not subjected to any racist and sexist remarks by the male chauvinist members of parliament. And the third one is, I think is very important, is about the creation of Malaysian identity and how we should, based on our citizenship, based on civic nationalism, right? And this is important because right now Malaysia is very much focused on ethnic identity and the conflicts of ethnic identity, that we do not give due attention to other political identities, so that we keep pushing aside other political identities such as gender to be given due attention by the state, right? And number four is, I think this is much more of a long-term thing. We need to focus on education and training and to open the mind and to change the mindset of the younger generation to show that women are also should be given due attention, due opportunities, spaces for them to develop themselves as individuals, and not only men should be given the position just because of their gender, right? And I think that is what my sharing for today, and I hope we can have much more fruitful discussions onwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabi, for presentation. It is interesting to discuss between two jurisdictions in which I think many questions has been sent to me, and it relates to women participation to election in Malaysia, and they want to compare how Indonesia and Malaysia to be able to provide access for women in politics. Okay,